have a quorum of members in the House here tonight. So we'll start with number 1, approval of 12/13/2021 minutes. The minutes are in your packet. Any problems, concerns, questions? If not, I'll take a motion to approve. We have a motion by Hertz, second by Larson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. That passes unanimously. We have the Human Resources Report for January. It's in your packet. Any questions?
I just wanted to call out 2 items on there. Alder Wadinsky, at your request, I included the report on discretionary performance incentives and the reason that they're granted. And I also wanted to draw the group's attention to a handbook change that I made administratively, and that is adjusting the anniversary date for police lieutenants to 1/1 as opposed to their job anniversary date. If you recall, about a year or 2 ago, we adjusted all the lieutenants' anniversary dates to make sure that they were happening in the same order. When we addressed compression, we moved them onto the same step. So we had some people who were hired years later getting their increases on a calendar month sooner than people that had been hired years before them. So out of fairness, we artificially moved it so that the people who were in the position longer would get their increases sooner. Well, now that all but one of them are on the same step, so it was getting pretty complicated and impossible to keep them in the correct order. So we have leveled the playing field and put them all on the same day. The fiscal impact for that was under $5,000, so I was able to make that change without bringing it forward. But if anyone has any concerns or items, we certainly could agendize it for a future meeting.
Any issues? Otherwise, we'll put it on file. Okay. Number 3, discussion and possible action amending Employee Handbook 4.07, Protected Service Employees Repayment Commitment.
We currently have some language in a contract that is signed by protective service employees when they're hired, police officers and firefighters. If they voluntarily leave our employment within the first 3 years of service, they pay us back for a portion of their training and hiring expenses. If they leave within their first year, they pay us back 100%. If they leave between 1 and 2 years, it's 75%. And it's 50% between 2 and 3 years. This is currently applied to anyone who leaves voluntarily. We got a request from the police chief to amend this language just for the police department, so that it would only apply to new hires who leave employment to another law enforcement agency. So if you're leaving the field of policing, they would not be obligated to repay. I have some concerns about how my department would handle that amendment. The only way that I can imagine that we could find out people's future employment plans would be through self-reporting. And I don't know that, someone could leave and then 6 months later take a job somewhere else. And I don't know how we could accurately get them to repay. The police did have a memo in the packet addressing my concerns. So I think that's all I have.
Anybody have any questions about the proposed amendment? Go ahead, Dawn.
I'm reading the fact that there's 2 policy options, and one, of course, for the police officers, this section only applies if the employer leaves employment and accepts a sworn law enforcement position with another law enforcement agency within 12 months of terminating employment with the city. Then, of course, it goes on to the second option, and I don't know, but I guess I'm in favor of trying to recoup as much money as we can from the officers when they leave within that time frame. Or am I reading this incorrectly?
No, any amendment to the current policy would result in the city potentially recouping less repayment. Right now, we recoup it regardless of the reason for leaving, as long as you leave voluntarily. So any changes to that involve us recouping less would be us getting less back. The department has some concerns about the safety and performance of people who are staying just to avoid a repayment obligation, that I believe is the concern they're looking to address. But yes, you're right, that would result in less recouping.
Go ahead.
Would the police chief be willing to elaborate on his thoughts on this?
I will. So the intention for this repayment program, was for the police department, our perspective is we don't want to be a training ground. So we don't want to, our policy is to pay for people to go through the law enforcement academy if we hire them and they haven't already been through the police academy. So that's 720 hours, that's 18 weeks of training that we pay wages, and we get reimbursed for the state for the training cost for them to go through that program. But we don't want to, because we're one of the few agencies in the area that do that, we don't want people to come to us, use us for the training, and then move on to another law enforcement agency because we paid for their training. That was the intention behind the repayment plan. So I'm fine with if an officer leaves our agency, goes to another law enforcement agency within 3 years, and we request that money back by policy. I have no issue with that. I think that's appropriate. I just put that second option in there. If you wanted to just waive it completely, I'm fine with that too. But we've had 2 officers leave for another agency within the last couple of years, and both of those officers stayed the full 3 years and didn't have an obligation to pay any money back. Recently, we had an officer we put through the law enforcement academy. He was in his second phase of field training and decided law enforcement wasn't for him, and so he decided to leave. And so my concern is that we would have the possibility of having somebody not want to be a police officer, and then they're out there doing the minimum, not meeting the community's expectations, and they're doing that just because they don't want to pay back a few $1,000s. And I don't want to keep them when we can go and recruit somebody else, bring them in, have somebody who wants to be a police officer here in the city of Wausau, and that would be my preference. I don't want $3,000 or $2,000 keeping somebody within our employment. I don't think that's a good thing for the citizens. I don't think that's a good thing for the police department. In terms of being aware of whether or not they are a sworn police officer when they leave our agency, law enforcement agencies usually do a background investigation. They'll contact us as a previous employer or current employer. So typically we'll know that. Everybody that's left for another law enforcement agency, that agency has contacted us. The other thing is the state of Wisconsin has a system that's run by the state called ACADIS. That system requires anybody in the state who is a police officer, deputy sheriff, a sworn law enforcement officer to be entered into that system. And so we can certainly check that system to see if somebody else if somebody that leaves our employment goes somewhere else and is a certified law enforcement officer in the state of Wisconsin, we'll be able to check that system and know.
I would be okay with that, but I would, I guess, like this committee to have final say on each individual account, make it happen, but have the committee review each one to make sure it's the right thing at that time for each one. Does the committee think about that?
I guess, so I'm not understanding. So if somebody leaves employment, you want us to decide if they have to repay it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if the police chief comes in and says, hey, we have this person that wants to leave, he's not going to another law enforcement agency, we think it's best for our department that this person is allowed to leave without paying back, and the committee should just probably review each one of those and approve them, since we're our HR committee.
The only thing, I guess I need to ask, is there like any kind of records? I mean, I guess I want to keep people's records and their desires out of public space as much as possible. I have a, that's my concern. Do you have a concern with that, Chief? Because once we come to here, the name is going to be out, because then it would have to go, I guess it would have to go, if we don't change this policy, it would have to go through, wouldn't it? It'd have to go through,
Yes, if you guys were considering them on like a case-by-case basis, it would have to go to finance and
Yeah.
council for approval. I'm not sure, I haven't investigated whether that would qualify for a closed session or not. My advice for you as a best practice would be to establish parameters. It's make sure that it has a consistent application and is less likely for either the impression or the unintended side effect of having discriminatory considerations come into play.
Yeah.
So it usually is best if we say, these are the guidelines we'd like to apply to everybody, as opposed to investigating them case by case.
Understood, very well. I appreciate that.
Chief, how many people, I know we can't, predict, but are we talking about a very few instances of this, probably?
Yeah, I would say there are some years where, nobody with less than 3 years of tenure leaves. And there are some years where there might be one or two, so maybe a couple a year at the most. And I think that's the other piece is, we manage an $11 million budget at the police department, and we're talking about at most probably a few $1,000s. So in the scheme of, I'm not trying to minimize the dollar amount, but in the scheme of things, it's a relatively small amount. And I think that first option, in terms of the policy change that I recommended in the packet, it accomplishes, our mission. It helps us keep people that we want to keep and allows people who don't want to be here the opportunity to leave and not be tied to our agency or city for a couple $1,000s.
I will say that a portion of the repayment actually returns to my budget, and it's a more significant portion of my budget than the police's. I unfortunately do not have an $11 million budget.
Oh, is that like a training budget comes out of HR?
The pre-employment selection process is in my budget, so the repayment for the medical, psychological, drug screen, and those items are from my budget.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I guess my question would be is how hard is it, or how do you enforce this? I mean, has it been enforced in the past? I mean, I guess you pretty much described it by the procedures that you can pretty much track where an employee goes, but, I mean, have they in the past been pretty responsible in returning their portion of the money they owe the city?
Yeah, I mean, they don't always like it. I know that the HR director has sent letters and, has had correspondence back and forth sometimes with employees who have left. But
We had one individual from the police department who I believe was sent to collections over this obligation. Failure to repay also has some reference implications as well. If I get a reference from someone who's refusing to repay, they get a negative reference from us. And the agency is told that they have failed to comply with policies and procedures. But that is one person sent to collections out of probably like 8. So we're not regularly undergoing that process.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and as you mentioned in your memo here, I'm in agreement that I don't think we want, I really don't want to see, an officer being held in the service when they feel it's not a right fit, but but the financial obligation is overwhelming. So I think it does make good sense to have that ability if they're gonna drop out of policing altogether, to waive the recouping of those costs. And like you said, if you've got the ability to look, 6 months or a year down the road and see if they've been licensed someplace else, then, that would give us, the onus in order to, recoup those costs then, if that were truly the case. But
So do we have a motion or any more questions? Go ahead.
I'll make that motion.
Of the number 1 option?
Is there 2 options? I think.
Yeah, It's the option with the number 1 and number 2. One is the one with the police officers applies if accepts a sworn law thing, and the other one just strikes as police officers. Do you see?
Okay. That's it. Yeah, I think we're talking about option number 2 then, is that,
I think we're talking about option 1.
Is it option 1?
Yeah, the one that
Okay.
says that we still have the ability, if they have a position within another enforcement agency within 12 months of terminating employment.
Okay,
Is
okay.
that's what you
Yep.
were talking about? So I just-
I see the
Okay.
differences between the two. Yes, option
Okay.
1, please.
I'll second option 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that, on option 1? Go ahead, Lou.
Yes, I question because I look at the staff recommendation and there really isn't a staff recommendation, so I'm going to ask Chief Bliven, what is your recommendation?
Yeah, I would definitely support option 1. I think that's probably the best solution that we have. We can still recoup some costs from people if they leave our agency and go to another law enforcement agency.
Thank
I would
you.
definitely support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second for option 1, which I will say for police officers, it applies if the employee leaves employment and accepts a sworn law enforcement position with another law enforcement agency within 12 months of terminating employment with the city of Wausau. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes, and thank you. Okay, let's go back. What is that? There's buzzing up here constantly. It's static, and it's like, whew. So, oh, okay, number 4 is discussion of possible action creating a paid internship program.
So staff have been talking for some time about creating a paid internship program, and what you have before you is kind of a skeletal structure that would allow each department to create within the established budget an internship program that would fit their needs. We have a broad base in pay because it's going to depend upon the responsibilities for the position. So this would be a paid internship program for us to develop individuals in the community for future employment opportunities, limited to 10 to 15 hours per week with pay ranging from $10 to $20 an hour depending upon the position. Individuals would have to be 16 years or older to be eligible, and departments would have the opportunity to develop their own internship opportunities based on theirs and the community needs. So for example, I currently could use an intern. I'm envisioning someone who is probably a higher education, so like a master's degree program or a PhD program, information science, who's looking for a project to design a information structure to digitize our files. Another department could be looking for, like our DPW department, they currently have a apprentice who could be kept on outside of the season. So the summer season, you've got a mechanic who's doing a good job and we want to continue to expand their skills and capabilities. So for a different rate of pay for a 17-year-old doing different job functions, they could keep someone on and continue to teach them how to be an effective mechanic for our heavy equipment. I know that the mayors had some expressed interest in interning in their department, and we've also had some inquiries for community development to do some project work for them too. So this is kind of an idea. The Human Resources Department would be responsible for making sure that if we employ any minors, we follow the rules and regulations, we follow all the laws. But I think this would be an exciting opportunity for us.
I am just here to enthusiastically support this. I think it's one step in maybe getting people, again, you talked about an employee pipeline, so I think we've got the opportunity for interns. Apprenticeships are another thing, and then moving on, like if we find success with some of these folks, maybe there's opportunity to find LTEs for them, and then eventually full-time employees. I think this is part of that solution. And I will tell you, I've gotten a lot of people reaching out to me asking, how do I intern in your office? Or maybe somewhere else too, mostly. But yeah, I just want to enthusiastically support this, and I think we have a lot of opportunity in how we deploy this too.
The budget that I presented I would fund about 3 interns in the year. So we're starting out kind of small.
And I hope we can develop this into working with people with disabilities and DVR, and we are all about internships. So there's all of that, and these, we always are looking at how to find effective employees or how to find trained employees. Let's train them ourselves. And then we know what they can do. So we can even get people from the schools. That is how the high schools have used with, car care and all the tech kind of applications. We can take it from there and do that. I think this is a good kind of pipeline for some good employees.
I wasn't sure if you saw me from back there, but I fist pumped when you said employing people of all abilities, so thank you for that.
So, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
and I will so make a motion that we move ahead with this intern program.
perfect. Okay.
I got a question then.
Go ahead.
This program, we're going to be employing interns 10 to 15 hours a week, but is there a total number of hours that we're going to supply for the internship? Because usually internships are limited term to some extent.
Our expectation.
I think you did the opposite.
I turned myself off. We would likely limit the hours so that the position remained non-benefited. The state, through the Wisconsin retirement system, establishes the number of hours someone can work before they start earning a pension. So we would probably use that as our cap.
Okay. Not the number of hours per week, but like the number of hours for a
Total for
Total periods.
a eligible employer. So we actually, WRS is pretty unique in that I can work and be like 5 hours short of qualifying for benefits in a different city. And then I come here and I get my 5 hours and now we're paying for their benefits. So we'd probably use WRS's total and not hold other city employment against an intern, but it's usually about 1,000 hours.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, having a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Perfect. Okay, we're up to number 6. Oh, no, sorry, number 5. Discussion of possible action granting settlement authority for workers' compensation claims. Do you want to take this or me?
Yeah, so we talked about this a couple of years ago, in 2020. And I just wanted to revisit it. In the past approximately 2 years, we've had 2 workers' compensation settlements for a combined amount of less than $1,500. In the last settlement case in particular, the employee waited about 2 months after we had negotiated a settlement before they actually received the funds, and it was funds of less than $5,000. So I just was, in light of the fact that we've been tracking settlements and the amounts due, I wanted to bring this back forward to the committee to reconsider establishing a threshold of either $10,000 or $25,000 that would allow the mayor and the human resources director to settle. The city attorney, I mean, anybody staff-wise that you guys wanted to vet, but some things so that I could streamline this process so that our employees could get their settlements a little bit more promptly when they're for small amounts.
And I guess I encourage this to come forward, and I will give you my reasons. Like she said, that the last one, we had to wait, and we had 3 closed sessions on that. We had HR that. Then the employee's name is on the resolution. Again, I have problems with, I know we live in a municipality, and because you do that, a lot of things are open, but I think that whenever we talk about people's health and their health records, I'd like to keep that as under the record as possible. We do have, 3 city attorneys, we have a HR director, we have a mayor, we have the people in to do this, and isn't this really directed by state law a lot in workers' comp anyway?
Usually,
You know,
yes.
it isn't like ordinance driven by us, it is driven by state law, so there's not a lot of wiggle room of what we do. And so I just feel that I would like at the 25,000, I just think that we need to kind of get away from minutia. I know when people start, they go, I want to look at everything, but I'd like to get away from the minutia, because what that does is really bogs our staff down. It bogs our attorneys down, it bogs our HR. We're constantly holding things and putting them through 3 committees. So, and then we have to find 3 closed sessions. So I'd like to hear what you guys think. Thanks.
Yeah, when I saw this on the agenda, I had to go back and read the minutes in the packet from that meeting we had 2 years ago. And at the time, we were hesitant on giving HR, that level of control. But seeing, after these subsequent 2 years, we've had a couple closed sessions, and it's a process. And I think we are, when we've discussed these workers' comp issues, we're in general agreement that to take the recommendation from HR. So I think, I can certainly get behind, changing the policy so that there is a cap. The $25,000 cap seems like a good place, since it's after that the amount. It triggers other procurement policies, so I would be in agreement to making that change. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am too, I'm in agreement of this, because I feel, as was been discussed, that if this gets rid of a lot of, quote, red tape, and settlements are more direct and more private, without being public record and without having, it's all good, and I support it. Thank you. In fact, I'll make the motion that we support this.
You?
And I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or concerns? Go ahead.
How many city staff or who will be authorizing this each time?
So the current process, when we come up with a settlement to bring to you, is the human resources staff in consultation with the city attorneys. And I don't think we've had a single one where we haven't also secured outside attorney through CIVMIC. So it's usually outside attorney, myself, my benefits specialist, and an attorney from our city attorney's office.
Well, that's fine. I was just wondering if it's more than one person, so it's a certain number of people that are going to review it and authorize it. That's fine. That's great.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes. Thanks. Correct. Hang on. Okay, so, this next one's mine. Discussion of possible action amending the schedule for future HR committee meetings. I have taken a new job starting the 21st, outside, my outside job. And my hours are a little different, even though I now will be working downtown. We have a meeting in March. We're coming towards the end of our term. And so if you remember, at the beginning of our term, every committee decides day, meeting time, and then chair and vice chair. We had decided to stay at 4:30, which has been the normal thing since I've been here, since 2016. We have 2 choices, because March, I don't know when April's meeting coming, if that is before or after the new council is seated, but I may not be here until 4:45. So I work till 4:30, I don't know, it's supposed to be somewhat flexible, but I don't know until I know. So I'm wondering, I just wanted to get the committee, there's a couple of choices. We can just change that meeting in March to 4:45 if everybody's in agreement, or we can have the vice chair take over and I come in whenever I can. I want to give everybody gets, whatever you guys want, because we did say 4:30. I'm hoping that I can make some adjustments, but I wanted to bring it to the committee, and it's better this way than by email and trying to get people around. So what are your thoughts?
Madam Chair, I wouldn't have a problem with 4:45. We're here at 4:45 anyway, so.
Up to you.
And the vice chair would not have a problem with that either. 4:45 sounds good to me.
Okay, is anybody else with the March meeting at 4:45?
5 o'clock's even better.
I'm good with 4:45.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever everybody's good with. I mean, I'm just kind of wondering why we didn't have 5:15 like all the other committees.
It's very strange. I don't know, since I've been here, it's been 4:30, and it is an early meeting for people that work,
Sure, and then once the committee is new again after the
We
election.
can change it,
sure.
yeah. Yeah.
The April meeting is April 11th.
I think that's before.
So I don't know if there's.
That would be
seats or
before
not.
the new council.
So I don't know
We'll
if we
figure
want
it
to move both, or if we want to just move March.
Up to you. I mean, I don't know. I would have more information by then, but if you want to just move both of them, and then we make the decision.
Just do it.
Okay, so that is done. Thank you so much for your flexibility. I appreciate it.
I missed who was the motion in the second? Did we had
Lou
Lou
was
and
a-
hers?
I'll make the motion
Yeah.
then to move
And then
the March and the
Hertz was the
April
second.
meeting
Yep.
to 4:45.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
so all in favor say aye.
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 And that is done. And thank you so much. And now we are at the end of our meeting.
We had an addendum.
Oh, I'm sorry, the addendum. We can just miss that, no. Okay, that is about the director, right?
Assistant.
Assistant director. I don't know where, I don't have it. Do you have it right there?
Nope.
Hang on. Okay. Okay, we have an addendum, discussion of possible action creating a temporary part-time deputy assessor position.
And I apologize for the late inclusion on this. It was a developing item. So we have unfortunately received a retirement notice from our current deputy assessor. And we are looking at the best way to continue operations while also preparing and training the next person for success. Council has approved us to overfill positions for training purposes like these, but they have to be budget neutral, and this example would not be budget neutral. So essentially, we're asking for permission to keep our current incumbent on less than full-time through May, which would allow for us to recruit and hopefully select a replacement and do appropriate training before that individual segues into retirement.
I move that we keep the assessor that we have on right now part-time until May to help mentor the new person.
We have a second?
Second.
Second by Wadinsky. Okay, any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that passes. That's it, right?
That is it.
That is it. Okay, we are ready to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.